Ask the Podcast Coach for August 3rd, 2019.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music. That means, hey, it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com. And joining me right over there is the one, the only, Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Always good to be back. We're in August. Where did July go? Did you see it?
Yeah, it was like, see ya.
Holy cow. Yeah. That flew by so fast. It's crazy the summer months, like as we get into August. I don't know about you. We're looking forward to podcast movement here coming up in 2 weeks. Are we 2 weeks out?
I think
two weeks and some change, right? With the weekend.
I just record.
Oh.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I looked over to my phone.
You'll have to get the opener from YouTube. But yeah, it's funny how fast the summer goes, you know, with all that. And I think in podcasting too, the summer can be, well, and it's winter down south, right? And so it's kind of different, but those months, right, whatever those are, they can either be really productive or you can miss a lot of time on some of those things. And so I think you got to kind of track that a little bit and say, were there things I wanted to get done in the summer, or the break, or whatever you want to call it, right? And it may help to kind of write some of these things down and kind of check them off, you know, like, hey, here's some things I wanted to get done over this time, because it can just disappear on you super fast. Yeah,
it's amazing how quick it goes. And I can now officially say I will be signing the contract tomorrow, but I've been working on this book, and we've kind of been negotiating back and forth on who's doing what and what's doing that. And I do now own the official audio rights of the book, which is cool.
Nice.
The one thing I was like, can I keep that one? And they're like, okay, fine. So that means I now really have to, now I have a deadline to meet. So that'll be fun. But hey, it's August 3rd, and we knew August 1st, no more Hangouts. So
it's gone. It is gone.
Yeah.
It's officially gone. I went out and checked it, and it's no longer an option on the, when you go to schedule it, it's no longer there. You can't force it. You can't make it work. It's gone. Yeah. Hangouts are gone.
Yeah. Cause you got to test it, right? Didn't you do a Gallup thing?
I do. Well, we did. No. So Thursday, let's see, hold on. Today's Saturday, right? So Thursday was the first. So I have Home Gadget Geeks on Thursday. And so Thursday, just before the show, I'm like, well, I mean, we're using StreamYard, so it's not such a big deal. Right. But Thursday for the show, I went out and tried to schedule one, and then I tried a whole bunch of like, can I go around some things? Did they really cut off every single path to it that I could find?
Right.
So I tried to schedule it different ways, and it's gone. So Hangouts on air. Let's be really, really clear. Hangouts on air that you can schedule to post into YouTube Live, like you would do, like we would use for this. No longer a function. You can still continue to use StreamYard or OBS or forget that, vMix. There we go. Yeah. All those services still work, and that's, I think, YouTube's direction is to continue to allow those streams to come in. That's what they want to host. To go to youtube.com/webcam, you can see the replacement, and I think that's an WebRTC replacement for Hangouts. This will be interesting to see if those get functionality. Today, it's a really basic version of a one camera streaming into YouTube. You don't get a lot of options. Be interesting to see if they do much with that, but I think they were trying to get away from supporting the plugin in Chrome and move into WebRTC. So good move for them.
Yeah, should be fun. If you by chance are listening on Spreaker, we are not there. You need to come over to askthepodcastcoach.com/live. And we actually did get, I'm using it here. Somebody sent in a voicemail message, and those are always fun because it's always great to hear from people. So this is from Paul Perez, and let me see if all right, we might have to listen to part of this. Jim, I'm going to quiz you on this, so you need to listen.
I'll listen. Okay. All right. I'll pay attention.
Hello, Mr. Jackson. My name is Paul Perez. My podcast is the Improve and Have Fun podcast at improveandhavefun.com.
Jim, what is the name of his podcast?
Improvement, have fun. I don't
see. That's it.
Okay.
And that was my point is, and I'll play his whole question in a minute, because I think I do this too. It's like, it's one of those things where I don't know if it's just, we know it so much, Or we have the whole like, well, I don't want to like brag about I don't want to be self-promotional or whatever. But it's like, well, Dave, what school do you do on Saturday, or what show? And I'll be like, oh, it's a thing I do with Jim Collison. It's called Ask the Podcast Coach. It's like all of a sudden our podcast becomes one syllable. and I'm like, and I've seen people do this all the time. And I think that's part of it is we're really self-conscious about self-promoting. But if somebody asked me, I should say, oh, it's every Saturday. It's Ask the Podcast Coach. Like over pronunciate it. Do you ever see what was like, it's like a 7-year-old smart child that's like doing like algebra and he over pronunciates all of his words and you just want to punch that kid in the face because you're like, oh, I know lots of words with big syllables. Well, we need to talk like a smart child when it comes to saying our podcast, because that's when I do the question at the end of the month. There are so many times that A, they don't leave their website address, even though no many times I can ask, and B, I can't understand what the name of your show is. I'm like, hey, this is Jim Smith from the podcast. And I'm like, what? And it's like, so keep that in mind when you're telling somebody about your show. Over pronunciate and slow down. All right, so let's go back. And I'm not picking on Paul. It just like I just said, we're all guilty of that, but just keep that in mind, because I don't think we realize we're doing that. So anyway, let's go back to Paul's question.
Hello, Mr. Jackson. My name is Paul Perez. My podcast is the Improve and Have Fun podcast at improveandhavefun.com. And I just had a question regarding trying to be on multiple channels. Now, I podcast and I have my website associated with the podcast. I do YouTube and I do Instagram as well. But of the three, of course, I get the most bites or the most downloads on through the podcast. But my question is, should I only focus on the podcast and not so much on YouTube or Instagram, since I don't get so much engagement there? Like kind of just like focusing on the one thing and just trying to get really good at the one thing? Or is it, in today's age, it's important to be on many platforms? So would love to hear your thoughts. And as always, thank you so much for everything that you do and all the help that you give so many of us. I'm a regular listener, and I've definitely implemented a lot of the stuff that you said on your podcast. Thanks for everything, Dave, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Paul. Jim, you do this, so I'm going to let you take first swing at this.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you have time for. So should you? Yes. Do you have time to do those? Okay. So in his case, his podcast is doing really well. The other channels, not so much. Does he want to spend the time? I mean, you got to cultivate those channels. If you're going to do it, you got to be in them. You got to find people. You got to follow them. You got to post interesting content. And Instagram's case, you have to make kind of different content that you make for other channels. I mean, Instagram's everyone's like, oh, let's take pictures. So we take pictures and they're like, oh, and here's an Instagram picture, right? And you turn your camera this way, right? And so it takes extra effort. If you have the time, does it hurt? No, it doesn't hurt. And it's just, you're going to burn an enormous amount of time getting that community up and running. So I hear this a lot from the podcasting community. Should I, and fill in the blank. Well, it's really, do you have time? That's, any of these can be a valuable. Twitter can, I said Twitter to somebody, to some Gen Z person the other day, like, you're still on Twitter? Like, I'm like, it's not that old.
Yeah. You're not on TikTok? Come on, Grandpa.
And I'm like,
Snapchat.
Well, Twitter's still big in some, I mean, there's still a lot of traffic for some genres, for some, groups. In tech in particular, there's still a lot going on out there on Twitter. So should I be on Twitter? Well, do I have time? If you're going to respond? I mean, I think, Dave, we said this before, but I think, don't spend a whole bunch of time creating a space and then not be there. Like, that just pisses people off. Like, that's either don't do it or go all the way in. But you need to budget time. I mean, I have times throughout the day, because this is my job. I have times throughout the day to check Facebook, to check Twitter, to check the channels that people communicate with us in. And I have to kind of budget that time out. But if you start stuff, you engage a whole bunch of people, they try to talk to you, and you don't come back for 3 weeks, well, that was a waste of time. Don't do it. So that would be my answer.
Yeah. I mean, why am I not on Pinterest? Because now I could easily upload an image. I use the social warfare plugin to do sharing, but and I've heard people say, oh, you can link to the image. And I did that for about 3 months years ago when Pinterest was like hotter than, whatever. And I just didn't get any traffic. And I just went, okay, I know this is only taking, 2 minutes, but I'm like, I started to play on Twitch for a while, and I would go over and do live streams to nobody. And I went, yeah, this is not right now, at least. It's like you said, what do you have the most time for? So, I made the mistake. You talk about don't go somewhere and then don't be there. I have a School of Podcasting Facebook page. Why? I don't know, because I ignore it on a regular basis. And every time I go over there, I'm like, oh, I keep forgetting people can reply to that. And I went over and somebody like left a message like, how much is your school? And it was like from June. And I was like, oh, oops. So yeah, that's
it's a time and a budget issue. And what do you want to commit to supporting? And once you start things, I started a Discord channel, and you can't really start those things and then ignore them, or they got to be open. I have a set of tabs on in a browser window that automatically open up when I open up any browser, and it ensures that and I keep those tabs open all the time. At work, I have Facebook open all day because it's my job. It's what I do. It's what I do, which is really bizarre. But to have a job that's so Facebook driven, but I run those tabs across so that I know I'm getting notifications, some of those things. I have to be careful, Dave, that I've turned off a lot of desktop notifications, because if I'm podcasting, and I do that a lot at work too, those toast notifications will just crush me in the middle of a podcast. And, so I've got to be careful to turn some of those off, and I'm checking them on a more regular basis. But I do the same thing at home. You just have to be careful. You have to kind of decide what you're going to commit to.
Yep. Eliquity says the same thing. You have to find the platform which gives you the most traction and focus on that social media. Yep. That's it. So wherever your audience is,
you can grow one though. Don't like, just because you go there and in the first 2 weeks, nothing's happening for you. You can't grow it. You got to work it like I think some people treat this like they walk into a crowded room. They're not going to talk to anybody, but they want to be people's friends. And you're like, oh, okay, you're going to have to reach out and shake some hands. Like, nobody's going to just come to you. I think we see this in the Facebook groups all the time. I started my podcast and I'm getting 15 downloads. And like, so, okay.
Congratulations. Okay. It's better than 14. Yeah.
You started it. What are you you got to do some things to make it interesting. You give people a reason.
Well, if you take it back to farming, it takes a while to grow the crop. If you go back to human life, it takes 9 months to make a baby, and you're trying to make a podcast in 6 weeks. And I'm like, it just takes some I just and this is, boy, you know what? I'm going to say something that you will hear in the future in the School of Podcasting. I'm signed up for a free month at Skillshare, and I'm watching a thing on SEO by the guy that started SEO Moz. And at the end, he says, hey, just so you know, I just gave you boatloads of strategies and things to look at. He goes, it took him 2 years of working at from 10 at night to 2 in the morning to build SEO. Well, like now it's like one of the SEO websites ever. And he goes, but it took him like 2 years to just get it to where it just started to like trickle, and it's just one of those things. Nobody wants to hear that. And I understand why, but it was just one of those where it's like,
in the promotion space. So at Gallup, we just launched this brand new book called It's the Manager. It's the #1 business book, best-selling in its first week of all time. So we broke records.
Right.
It's going to do 1 million copies. I mean, it's a big book. So big launch. We do all these things, all this talk about it in the social channels. And, we launched that back in the summer. And now when I talk to some of my customers, they're like, okay, what's next? Like, seriously? Like, that was just 6 weeks ago. Like, it's not even cold yet. Like, and so when you're dealing with listeners, if you want to be in this space, you have to, it's never one and done. You got to be constantly, once you create something, even if it's big, Dave, you know this, your mega episodes, right? Those take a lot of time, right?
Huge.
Guess what? That next Monday, same length of time to prepare for it. But then you had the week before, right? You don't get, it's like, oh, I get to take a break. No, that next Monday is coming.
hit the ground running. Yeah, I'm so happy right now. I have 2 interviews in the can. I'm actually kind of like, oh, all right. Now it gives me time to look at other stuff and go to town and that whole 9 yards. So
yeah. Still same length of time though. You don't get to rest.
No.
And so you got to keep. Yeah.
I had a friend of mine that was a professional stand-up, and he said the hardest thing for him when he finally decided to quit, he goes, is everything I did. He goes, if I was watching TV, if I went to a restaurant, he goes, any place he goes, all I was doing was looking for what can I make funny out of this. Mm-hmm. And he goes, it was the longest time to turn that off. And we're kind of, I don't know about you, I am the same way. I'm always looking at stuff. Or the other day, where'd he go? He just had somebody in the chat room, I can't find that, it was way up there, said bring back Building a Better Dave. That is the show I do whenever I have something weird come across my mind. And so I might do an episode on this, but I'm probably not, because people are going to go like, what? And so that's when that one comes. And that my whole point of this, you ready for the weird idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We always say things like, oh, don't, you can't say that in front of the kids. Like, don't say the S word in front of the kids. And I'm not saying that's right. I just think it's odd that, let's say that kid is 5. In 13 years from now, if you say the S word in front of that kid, nobody says a thing. And I'm like, if cuss words are damaging to children, like literally, like, don't know, you will, I know, like, why? Like, what happened in 13 years that suddenly they're not damaging? So now, is that an episode? I don't know. It's just one of those things I'm like, I find it odd in that it's almost like a George Carlin-esque. I don't want to compare. Wait, let's take that back, because I'm nowhere near the brain of George Carlin, but it's just one of those things I just kind of go, So yeah, so that show happens whenever I have something that I go, or I might talk about whatever. But yeah, so that show's on there. But anyway, so let's see here. We're talking about podcast movement in the chat room. Yeah. Kyle Bundle. Yeah, I know good old Kyle Bundle. Kyle Bondo. How can you mess up Bondo? It's the best last name ever. He's going to Podfest this year, but not Podcast Movement. We probably should do the Podcast Movement primer. And it's kind of one of those things we do every year. And it dawned on me why we do that every year, because every year there's more people going.
Yeah.
And so, Jim, let's do this. You give one tip, I'll give one tip, and we'll see who runs out the first.
Comfy shoes for sure.
Comfy shoes. Chapstick. Chapstick is a must.
This year, it sounds like, so I was listening to New Media Show, and Dan was on there talking about where they're at in the hotel. And it sounds like food's going to be available, but I'm probably going to pack some serious snacks. So I'll have snacks in the backpack for every day.
Yeah. Breath mints is another good one
for sure. Yeah. Just get those little plastic packs of them and throw them in your backpack.
Yeah. It's always kind of a bummer, because you're walking around and, as you like walk down the hall, it's
true. No, that's true.
But it's worth it. Trust me. The people you're talking to will thank you later.
Yeah. And I've said it twice already, but backpack, a comfortable backpack. Yeah. You don't want to be carrying things. You want to throw it on your back and go.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what I used to have before. I had some sort of laptop case, and I've ditched that for a backpack. Water, drink lots and lots of water, because you're going to be talking literally nonstop. I will be talking, but you've heard me. Every year I come back and I sound like Barry White, because I talk from about 8 in the morning till about 3 in the morning. So that's always fun. Any other ones?
So you're going to have a lanyard. Well, if you're a podcaster, have cards and stickers and some of those kinds of things. I'm not sure Podcast Movement is the place you come to advertise your podcast so much. I mean, there are podcasters there, but they're all trying to advertise their podcast, but still not a bad place to share some of those. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you. I'll probably be hanging out with you quite a bit this Podcast Movement, but some of those kinds of things, swag to give away.
Yeah. You know what? We'll come back to that one in a minute. I'm going to cheat and use the chat room. Daniel says hand sanitizer. And here's why, because everybody is germy, and I don't mean that in a negative way. But if you want to stay some people are not. They've picked up something on the plane, And
it's just humans. It's just humans.
Yeah. And you're going to be shaking a lot of hands. So
yeah.
Let's Jim, any other ones? Otherwise you can cheat and go to the chat room.
No. One thing is really watch your sleep. Like it is like, yes, you can sleep on the plane on the way home. Yes, that is a strategy, but it is, and I say this lightly because you're only there. You only get to see these people once a year in most cases. And so maximize the time that you have. I would, I guess, let me rephrase this. I would prioritize time with people over doing things. Like,
yes,
don't podcast. Like, don't burn a bunch of time podcasting from Podcast Movement. Spend time with people. We used to do this all the time, and you'd spend an afternoon trying to get a podcast together, and then, well, we got to edit it, and then we got to get it posted, and then we got to let everybody know. And you're like, this is a time with people. Make sure you spend it.
Yeah, and keeping with the sleep thing, or just what you were saying, if you're having go through this would be my tip. Go through the schedule and circle the sessions you want to attend if that's what you're there for. But if you're in the middle of a really good conversation and your session starts, if you have the virtual ticket, stay with the conversation, because you can always watch the sessions later, even though you won't. I don't know about you. I keep trying. Like, I started to watch the stuff from Podfest, and I made it through one and was like, that's it. So, but that would be my guess. First things first, pick out what sessions you want to go to so that you don't miss them. But if you're in the middle of a really good conversation, skip the session and stick with
and do that the weekend before. Pick out your sessions the weekend before. I think they're all available, right? You can go out there and do they have an app out yet? I haven't looked.
I'm with you. I haven't looked.
Well, this would be a good weekend, by the way. This weekend or next would be good weekends to do some research kind of before you get there. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Get a map of the facility if you can find it. Those kinds of things to kind of plan and prepare, and to know how you're getting from the airport to the hotel. I haven't figured that out yet, how that's going to happen, and some of those kinds of things. It's
called Uber. That's so know the name of your hotel is what
shuttle.
You need to
Sometimes there's a shuttle. It's just good to know, right? There may be a shuttle available for you.
Chris has a great tip here. Chris Nessie, open mind and a growth mindset. Yeah. And that's the other thing. I guess I would say I've seen that a lot. How do I go to an event if I'm an introvert? And let's go with that lovely saying, what's the worst thing that could happen? Because all you have to do is walk up to somebody and say, so what brings you to the show?
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you have to say. And they'll go, oh, well, I do a podcast about bran muffins. It's the Brand Muffin Podcast. Find it at muffincast.com. How about you? And you go, oh, well, I do the, Pygmy Pony Racing podcast, whatever, and off you go. And you'll know about halfway through the sentences if you want to continue to talk. And if you go, yep, this isn't really much for me, you go, hey, great. It was great meeting you. Have a great show. And they'll go, great. And because they know that you don't connect either. There's nothing really here. But the cool thing is later, if somebody says, oh, I was really hoping to find I do a podcast about Pop-Tarts. I was really hoping to find somebody that does a show about, brand muffins. You're like, oh, you need to go talk to John. He's over there in the corner in the blue shirt. So don't be afraid to talk to people.
I'd love a podcast about Pop-Tarts. I was in the vending machine just Friday, and I was like, I need a little snack. They had Pop-Tarts, and they're $1. And I'm like, yes, I would love a Pop-Tart podcast. Dave, I also don't think, introvert question. I don't think you have to talk to everybody, by the way, at a conference. Like, I know you go and there's people, and that's what we're saying. Now, you and I are both extroverted. So we have no problems with that, right? I think you could go to a conference, have a few people that you talk to, go to the sessions, take great notes. I don't think you have to take yourself out of your comfort zone to meet people if you're introverted. So
I need to correct you on that, though.
Okay.
I look extroverted.
Oh,
I am not. The weirdest thing ever, last year, Philadelphia, we're there, and it's the night of the Hall of Fame thing. So I'm all decked out. I'm in my suit. And I remember I went up the escalator and I looked up, and normally for me, it's like summer camp. I will see somebody that I know. And I looked up and I didn't recognize a single person. And it was just a sea of people in front of me. And I could just feel myself going back into my shell. And I was like, and in my head, I'm like, just go up and ask somebody. So what brings you to the show? Like, I'm hearing my own advice. And I did. The other thing you might do, here's a tip, and I wish I could give credit. It might have been Michael O'Neill. If there's a circle of people, and usually there is, look for the person look at their feet and look at somebody who's not completely like dedicated to the circle. They're kind of like half pointing out, and stand next to that person, because that person will more than likely expand the circle to include you in it. So I'm going to try that this year. If I get into that place, and I'll be like, So, but yeah, there are times when I can get, very, my ex-wife used to laugh at that. She's like, are you turning into Shy Dave? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, she dragged me to an event for her job or whatever. And she's like, where is outgoing fun Dave? And I'm like, not here right now. Sorry. So I understand when people are like, yeah, I'm not really sure about it. And it's just, you just got to do it. You just can.
But it's also okay. I guess let me say this. It's also okay not to. And if you come to the conference, you don't have to be an extrovert. Like, you can do, they have lots of things available for you. You can, like I said, go to the session, sit in the back, sit in the front, sit wherever you want.
Oh yeah.
Do whatever you want. Like, it doesn't require massive networking to come to Podcast Movement. You can do it. Just do your thing.
Yeah, you can absolutely. You can still go to Podcast Movement, attend all the sessions, and not talk to anybody, and come out with a huge amount of value. Totally. Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah. But I will say, I've gone to events and I get home and I'm like, you know what? I had that thing. I should have talked to that person.
Oh, totally.
But Daniel says, never ask your creative person what's the worst thing that can happen, because they can come up with very convincing answers.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I think, Dave, anything else when we think about tips for conference going? I've done a ton of them. I will, you and I will both be there, and we'd love to meet you if you're Ask the Podcast Coach. Listen, I'm just trying to enunciate that. I'm practicing. If you're an Ask the Podcast Coach listener, we'd love to meet you, by the way. So most of you are podcasters, so you know the deal. But we'd love, don't be shy. Come up and introduce yourselves. And you all know Dave, but everybody never come talk to me. Dave gets all the love. I'd like a little love.
Well, the thing I thought that was interesting is Emily Prokop. We know Emily from The Story Behind. She said the first time she met me at Podfest or Podcast Movement, she was in an elevator with me and was too nervous to say hi. And I was like, you are kidding me. She's like, no. She's like, I was like, oh my God. She goes, I looked down, I saw your thing. And it's like, that's Dave Jackson. So please don't do that. Just don't
do that. Just please don't do that.
Yeah. Just go, Dave, great to meet you. I'm so-and-so from such and such. And I would love to meet you. Speaking of so-and-so from such and such, I should mention that Thursday night, I had dinner with Arnie Chapman from thefootballhistorydude.com. He was in town for the Hall of Fame, the whole football thing. Here's the cool thing. Because of my podcast, Arnie applied for a press pass and got one. I mean, how cool was that? And so he went in yesterday. I got a text from him, and he's like, hey, wish me luck. I'm going into the press room. And so the cool thing about it is, and I said, dude, I want a recording of this because of my podcast story. He said, yeah, you have and I have no idea who got inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Some big football dudes that were very, very successful. But all the old timers come back because they missed their, because there's somebody there. You know what I mean? It's like you're at the grocery store. You're like, whatever, Terry Bradshaw, who? But when you go to the Hall of Fame thing, there's a whole bunch of people like, oh my gosh, it's Terry Bradshaw. It's Fran Tarkington. Holy cow. So he gets to interview all the old timers who don't maybe have as much buzz as they used to. And I said, dude, that's awesome. So he said, yeah, I even get to go into the side door. It's like a press pass. So Thank you, Arnie, for, and of course I took him to Luigi's Pizza, which it was hilarious because there was somebody in line that was there from out of town, and their friend said, oh, well, I had to bring you to like everybody from out of town, like you have to go Luigi's. So
how far is Luigi's from where you're at?
10, 15 minutes, if that. He was in, he which you should do. He didn't stay in Canton because, as you might imagine, supply and demand, all the hotels in Canton, at this point in time, hugely expensive.
Yeah, so and Canton's not that big to begin with.
No. And so he stayed maybe 15 minutes away, right, if that, and much, much better things. Oh, speaking of that, here's a fun story. You love technology, Jim.
I do.
I'm on my way. I am renting a new iPhone because my other one the battery was starting to get a little weird on it. And they emailed me and said, hey, you know what? We're able to take your money if you want to give it to us, which is basically what they say when they go, you're available for an upgrade. I'm like,
yes.
Really? Because it still cost me money. On the way to the hotel to pick up Arnie, my new phone went out of service and they transferred it back to my old phone. So I'm in the middle of looking at Waze, and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, you're roaming. And I'm like, why am I roaming? And then I tried to like, I get in, none of my texts, like I'm telling Arnie, I'm like, hey, I'm stuck in traffic. I'll be there in a minute. And I've never heard of anybody doing that. Now, Verizon was really cool. I got to Arnie's hotel and I'm like, can I use your phone? Because apparently mine is dead. And I went to a couple things and they're like, you are roaming. You can click here to buy a number. And I'm like, so I was able to.
It had activated and then it dropped its activation. Something in the servers must not have been.
Yeah. So that was kind of fun.
Well, that's no fun.
Yeah.
That's no fun.
Wow. I'm laughing at me being me. So we went from podcast movement to thanking Arnie, and now I'm talking about the phone.
It's exciting to get a new phone.
It was.
It's an exciting thing.
And I got an Apple Watch as well. So that's
welcome.
I've been on a roll lately. It's just like I had plastic in my back pocket that was just like, don't you love me anymore, man? Did
you put the watch on payments?
No, it's the whole Verizon thing. You just rent this stuff is basically what it amounts to.
Basically, yeah. Sprint. I'm on Sprint, and they do the same thing. Yeah. I found the Apple Watch really, really useful on listening to podcasts. So, right, you can do things. So I'm in the car or whatever, and I'm listening, or I'm in the gym or whatever, and you can do the things like fast forward or skip ahead or stop right from the watch, which is super helpful.
Yeah, my favorite thing is I was out biking Wednesday night and I'm listening along, and I have my phone in my pocket. I don't have the wireless earbuds yet. I should just burn more plastic doing that. But anyway, I'm doing that and I forget what show I was listening to, and I'm like, oh, all right, time to fast forward to an ad. And I just pulled up my watch and fast forwarded right there. I'm like, all right, that's worth the money right there. So it was very cool. And there's a lot of cool health stuff in it. I was mad because my Fitbit lost my account. Like it's been a week. It's been 9 days since I finally called them and they're like, that's odd. When we type in your email address, you're not in the system. And by not communicating to me that they just said, oh yeah, well, we'll escalate this. And then they just never, said, hey, we're still working on it. Don't worry about it. We're so sorry. Nothing. And so when I was in the Apple store and this guy who was a diehard Android guy was like, oh man, Apple Watches are like the best.
And I'm like,
wait, yeah. So
game changers when you take your first phone call on it. That is super cool. Cause we grew up with Dick Tracy, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you're like, it starts vibrating, and you look and a phone call's coming in and you recognize the person and you're like, okay, hello, and you can hear them and you can talk to them and it's pretty great. And so for me, that's a game changer, not to have to pull my phone out in those kinds of scenarios, especially for quick calls. Although we do very little, like that would be way faster for somebody to just call me, but then I get text messages on the watch, which is not as great. I mean, it's okay. You can do it, but not as great.
This is not you could do this with a regular phone. You can go into somewhere in the phone settings and create pre-written text messages. So like every morning, my brother around 10:30 will text me. He's like, morning, brother. And I always text back, morning. And I realized I could now set it up to where on my watch, I could just choose the preset of morning and email him back in 2 seconds. So that'll be fun. Liquidity has a great point. Even when you go to Podcast Movement, you can just get free swag. Grab the first t-shirt. If you are a Libsyn customer, go to the Libsyn booth. That's where I'll be. In fact, I'll be there all week, except for my session. Does starting a podcast make you want to pee your pants? And I'll also be on I forget what I think originally we're going to call it Help Us Help You, but it's a panel with me and Mike Dell and Shannon from Podbean. And it's all about behind the scenes of a podcast support desk.
It's a great idea.
But Liquid brings that up, and that's a question we had from Paul Padmore. Is that the same guy? Nope, different Paul. Hey, what are good giveaways you can recommend to entice listeners? And here's Jim, just for the record, we'll peel back the curtain for a second. It's 11:05. I'm putting 11:05 in the Trello thing.
Nice.
So later when I do the show notes, I will know that we did this 45 or 35 minutes into the show. So how would you figure out what swag?
Well, I think it kind of depends on your genre and what you're doing and what your audience is expecting. I would look to the industry to say, well, okay, what kind of things do they give away? So, what's important to them? Is it little trinkets? Is it stickers? For a while, stickers were a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. Could it be little keychains? Could it be, coasters, drives. Right? Could it be coasters? Yeah. Those kinds of things where, what do you think? And then I think just be original with it. I'm kind of an anti-swag guy now. I have so much junk like from conferences and those kinds of things. I really am. I don't want, when I go to a booth, personally, like when you said Lipson t-shirts for customers, I did have a little thought, like maybe I'll be a customer for a month, but they have a $5 plan, right? It's a $5 t-shirt.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a deal.
That's a good point.
Yeah, there you go. Sign up SOP free and do I get an extra month for free if I use SOP free? Is that right? For Lipson?
SOP free. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Come on, I'm trying to pimp you, and you're like,
well, there you go. And now's the best time because you'll actually get this month free, and September free,
and next month free. Yeah, you want to do that for sure. But yeah, no, I don't, Dave. I'm kind of, for me personally, but there's listen. Harry Durant has had a huge success with t-shirts. That's not a cheap. And what do you think? He bring 200, 300 of those things to
probably. And the best I've ever bought t-shirts, and we had to buy 144 of them, was $6. So that's $700 ish and that was back when I was in a band. So Daniel's talking about, I don't know about Mighty Deals. I have a thing through TeePublic. If you go to podcastclothes.com, that's always a good name when you have to over pronunciate it. Podcastclothes.com. I don't know about Mighty Deals. I'll have to check that out. But
so inexpensive ways to do that. I like coasters. Those aren't bad. I've got a couple on my desk.
Yeah, stickers are fun. I'm still a big sticker fan. If I were to hold up my iPad here, I have stickers all over my case. So I think the thing that doesn't work anymore, Jim's holding up his laptop. It is just a smattering of
So that's the most important one right there. There we go.
I think the one that instantly in my brain I go, okay, I'll be throwing that away later, is the plastic or the rubber whatever wristband. I don't think wristbands. I think those were cool around the days of Armstrong, the bike guy. I want to say Neil, but that's the moon guy. Lance Armstrong. And I think that fad is come and gone. I'm trying to think what else. Here's the thing
those were real popular for a while.
Yeah. Here's the thing that drives me nuts. And I would love your opinion on this. When somebody hands me a business card that is not shaped like a business card, like it's it's one of those that's like supposed to be like put it on your key ring or something like that, or it's the size of a Kindle, or the size of a Netflix. It's like, yeah, here's my business card, and you're like, wait, what am I? That's not going to fit in my pocket. So to me,
is that a Netflix mailer?
That is a Netflix mailer.
Dave Jackson.
I did. It's a free month. I was like, all right, let's investigate that. Yeah. For me, make a business card that looks like a business card. So
well, you know why they do that, right? Because it's to stand out, right?
To stand out, and it stands
there's a
out,
whole bunch of marketers for the longest time who are like, hey, if you make it a different shape or a different thickness or whatever, when people are flipping through their cards, it'll drop out onto the floor and then everybody will step on it. That was the marketing spiel.
Yeah,
it's not what they said, but
I remember you I remember you all the way to the trash can, and then I'm like, all right. So
there's some unique ones that look good. Yeah. The other side of that is you'll remember it. Like that's what you're supposed to. It's supposed to be a memory thing,
right?
Obviously, not working for you.
Not working for me. Hey, if you are in the chat room and you have a question, as we do this every Saturday, it's always askthepodcastcoach.com/join. We would love to answer your question live.
I think at Podcast Movement this year, are you gonna change gears?
No, go right ahead.
I think at Podcast Movement this year, I'm going to use on LinkedIn. There's an app that, this is how I kind of prefer to connect with folks now, is on LinkedIn. Just a nicer place to be, I think. But if you go into the LinkedIn app, this is kind of cool. In the up in the top, if you go to click your home page, let's see. go to the, I should know this. I have to find this every time. There's a setting where you can say, turn my phone on, and anybody else who has the app and has that turned on, you can connect to them. It'll just connect. It's like a near field connection. I always have to remember. Hold on. Let me see if I can find
Sounds like a total hookup app.
Kind of is. But if you're in a room, so like I do this when I speak from time to time. I'm like, hey, let's all connect on LinkedIn. So go to the app, do this. I always know, like not like right now, because I'm just thinking of this now, but I always know how to get there. I'll figure this out here in just a second when you're talking. But go there and let's connect right now. And that gives, they don't have to, but it's a super easy way to connect with people on LinkedIn. And it's like in a room size. So I could have a room, Dave, you could do that during your session. Hey, if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I've got my connection thing turned on, and I'd love to, go here in the app and get that done. I've done that for some business meetings that we've had, like for business professionals where I want to connect with them, and I'll get 40 or 50 to connect in a day, which is great. So it's another great way to use technology. Let me figure out where that is as you keep talking.
Well, what I need to also remember, I need to get this in my brain. If somebody goes, well, where can I find your podcast? I need to be able to say, oh, just go to schoolofpodcasting.com, or you can just text SOP to 31996. I never say that. I need to have that in my brain. Oh, just text SOP to 31996 because I forget that a lot. But yeah, so anything you can do to connect, he's found it.
I did find it. So if you go to your people, if you go to the people section, so you're on the LinkedIn app, there's a little people right at the very top. It says find nearby up in the middle there. You can't see it because of the lights, but it says find nearby. It's off by default. Thank you, LinkedIn. That's the right response. You don't want to have that on. As soon as I click on it, it will say share my nearby status, and you can turn that on, and everybody who's turned that on in the area will start appearing there, and you can choose to connect with them that way. It's a super easy way to get that done. So someone had said in chat, the app, Christopher said, the PM app will let you connect with each other. Yeah, but I never use the Podcast Movement app after the show. In LinkedIn, you have a little better chance of connecting with people that way if you want to do that. So that's just another option. I have almost 5,000 connections on LinkedIn now, and it's super helpful for what I do.
And that is something to kind of slightly revisit the old thing we're talking about. If there is somebody you really want to meet at Podcast Movement, contact them ahead of time and set something up, because I know there have been times when Steve Lee from International Podcast Day last year, I saw him in the hallway for like 2 seconds, and I'm like, dude, we'll have to connect later. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And that was the only time I saw Steve. That was it. So if there's somebody you really want to meet, you mentioned earlier about doing podcasts at Podcast Movement. So you're kind of like, is it? See, I'm with you on that. And here's why. I think it's a great place to connect, make that connection and say, I would love to have you on the show, get the contact info and set that up. Because I have to watch how you say that, because if somebody interviews you, you are in a one in a lifetime chance. This happens once a year, and you've now missed 90 minutes of it. And to me, I'm like, don't miss the once in a lifetime or once a year thing to do something you can do anytime. Now, granted, you can only do it face to face at this point, but to me, I'm like, because I've heard other people say like, wow, I just got hijacked. I thought it was going to be cool, but it took us 2 hours. And, so be careful with that. You don't want to like drag people out of.
I think that ship sailed a little bit too on, broadcasting live from events was really cool when it was first, we could do all these things. And now you're kind of like, I mean, there are certainly circumstances and situations where it makes sense, but I think anymore people are kind of like, well, okay, that's okay. I mean, that's like, so say you and I did a live Ask the Podcast Coach from Podcast Movement. I don't know if it's that much different. Now we could do maybe we could do some different spins or have somebody we normally wouldn't get, but it's so easy to get those people anyways, any Saturday we wanted them. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't see the payoff. I would rather spend my time. That's a lot of time in prep, in getting ready, and getting set up, in advertising, and going live, and edit it, and post-production. I just don't know if it's worth it right now.
Aliquity has a great thing. You could do this on your phone. I have people fill out an interview form at the conference, which takes 5 minutes on Google Forms. I have their contact info and when I can get back. Perfect. There are some great things you can do. Like you just mentioned, the LinkedIn thing.
I'd use LinkedIn.
If you have MailChimp, I believe MailChimp has a thing. So if somebody says, and you're talking about a newsletter or whatever, you can say, oh, you can sign up for it right here if you want. If that's the route you want to go. Can we shift gears?
Yeah, totally.
Maybe I have a great point. Banks brings us up in the chat room. How many hundreds of dollars do I have to spend on a mic to make my $15 voice sound like a $50 voice? So far, the more I spend, the more my voice sounds like $15. But here's the thing. I'm going to put a link in the chat room. And that is to a picture of Tim Ferriss, who just went over 4 million downloads. I think it was at 40 million. It's a lot of millions because, well, he's, Tim Ferriss, and he has a picture of his quote studio. Because I see a lot of people now like putting up audio proofing and they're, this and that, and they're buying insane amounts of this and that. Tim Ferriss records his insanely popular podcast in his kitchen with a 2100 and a pop filter. And I was like, holy cow, that was pretty amazing for that. Yeah, you will find this at askthepodcastcoach.com/262 is where the links for today. So
sweet looking kitchen.
Yeah. Well, it's Tim Ferriss. He's all about cooking too. Didn't he have like a whole chef thing he was trying to do?
Yeah, it looks like he's doing it from the bar, the island.
Yes,
in his kitchen.
The kitchen island.
Yeah.
So
no, super great. Yeah, you can. I think to a point, right? Your audio needs to be good to a point, but if you've got a following and if people like you, it's really what it comes down to. You got to be a likable kind of guy, so people actually like you. If they don't like you, they're not going to listen no matter what you say. Like I don't like Gary, so I don't listen to Gary Vaynerchuk because I don't like him.
Oh,
but that's my personal thing. Plenty of people really love his stuff, and so he's super popular.
Gary is an acquired taste. I pop in and out of Gary.
Oh, it's so painful.
But there's only so much I can hear him talk about hustle before I just go, yeah, okay, I get it.
Well, but does he set up his videos so that it looks like he just spent a minute setting them up? And like he's running in between super important meetings where he's a big deal, but his shirt's unbuttoned and his hair's all kind of messed up. And then he's like, okay, I literally I had something I had to say and I'm just saying it right now. And like, is that staged? Do hours of production go into that look?
Well, the new prime minister of England, there was a thing on HBO.
Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson, thank you. Yeah. And he pointed out how like there are people like, look, his hair was fine. And then he's getting ready to go on the BBC and he purposely musses up his hair so he looks like that lovable goofball, good old Bojo.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? So
I hadn't heard that with Bojo. That's a good one. Yeah. Well, it's an image thing, right? And so, he wants to have that kind of image thing kind of going on. And so, okay, I didn't mean to get negative on that one. That Gary sends me off. It's like, so I go off, like when you go off on Anchor, I that's my thing. That's my Anchor. Don't do it, Dave.
I've listened to Tim Ferriss. I listened to his interview of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a couple other, but I've read his stuff and I'm always kind of like, all right, I think I read part of the 4-Hour Workweek and it just seemed like I love when people with teams give me directions on how their team helps them out to do something super easy and completely ignore the fact that I don't have a team. And I know the answer is, well, then go get a team. And I'm like, I get that, but there's never like, oh, and if you don't have a team, here's how you start a team, or here's what you could do, or things like that. So,
I have both, Dave. I have both a team at work who's very, very helpful, and then Home Gadget Geeks, Cyber Frontiers. That's all me. There's no team. There's no I in that thing. Oh, it's only an I. So, I always say there's no I in team, but there is one in win. So I have seen both sides of the fence and live on both sides of the fence today. Yeah. And there's some great things about having a team, and there's some hard things about having a team.
Yeah. When you start making decisions based on committee, that gets real old real quick.
Hey, you know who is also a great team? and I think we're going to miss it.
No, actually, I did this on purpose because
good.
This is the last or the first week of the month. And I was like, you know what we're going to do different this month is we're going to do this at the end, right? Because we were breaking it up.
Okay, good.
And I was like, hey, you know what? Let's just wait to do that at the end.
I wanted to be a good co-host and make sure we
don't miss it. So yeah, he's talking about our awesome supporters. And so we are talking about awesome people like Greg at depthshepherd.com, Glenn the Geek at, I still don't know if he's going to Podcast Movement, horseradionetwork.com. Glenn is over in jolly old England right now. I was looking at his Facebook. Josh Rivers, who's getting ready to do a new season of podcasting experiments where he's going to be focusing on geographic. Like I just said, I said, dude, you got to talk to the Holyfields from I Am Salt Lake. So he's got that season coming up. Max Trescott over at aviationnewstalk.com. We might talk about my flight. I took a flight last night that was different in the post show. Shane from spybrary.com, Carrie Bond from keywestperspective.com. That's a show, oddly enough, about Key West. Who would have thought? My buddy Ronsley over at Amplify Media Group. Find him at mustamplify.com. Carl White does the Life in the Carolinas podcast. Find him at lifeinthecarolinaspodcast.com. Kim Craggy from Toastmasters101.net. And we want to thank our awesome $10 supporters. This is Jeffrey Hallish from Podnuts. That's Podnutz. Jonathan Bloom at weeklyawesome.com. Michael Delaney at babymountainradio.com. He does the show Caregivers for Dementia. Nick Suberling, Subes, at cincinnatissoccertalk.com. Sean Park at BeYourOwnNerd.com. Barry Kessler at barrykessler.com. Jay Cleveland Payne at morebettermedia.com. Our $5 supporters are Corey Finneran at ivyNV.com, Chris Holofield, speaking of him, IamSaltLake.com, Ed Ryan from Podcasting for Dummies, Eric Hunley at Unstructured Pod. He's also got a new show. It's about words that are, I just did it on the Podcast Rodeo show. And I told him this is half the problem. There's a word for when you, like bojo, that's a thing. And I can't remember what that word is. It's like Trumpow. It's like the Trump hour. But anyway, he's got a new show out. So Eric, thanks for being a supporter. Eliquity, who just got back, speaking of traveling in Europe, find her at travelglutenfree.me. Jason Bryant, who's listening on an airplane today, matttalkonline.com. Jason from CUATX.com. Jeremy Dennis at transmissionspodcast.com. Some guy named Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Joel Solsihai at stackingbenjamins.com. Kim Slusher at distractedlifepodcast.com. And I can't find my mouse. There we go. Rob Griffiths at bedtime.fm. Master Cauldron at cauldronscrypt.com. Rob Griffiths at bedtime. I think I've already hit. I think Rob got a twofer here. Bedtime.fm/storytime. Troy Heinrichs at blacklistexposed.com. Troy Price at frontporchstudios.com. Kyle Bondo at gagglepod. Again, the coolest last name ever. Matthew at scottishpodcast.com. Michael Ray, Ross Brand over at livestreamuniverse.com, and our awesome $1 supporters, including Alan Palmer, Adam Higgins at oddadoutpodcast.com, Anthony Arno at Route 66 Podcast, that's 66podcast.com, the Audio Dice Network at audiodice.net, Barb at anchor.fm/BarbTUSA, Brandon at seahawkerspodcast.com, David Wilson at Ottawa Works, Dan at based on a true story podcast.com, Dave at the soccersidelines.com. He's a new supporter. Emily Prokop at the story behind podcast.com. Garrett at utrmedia.org. Bumble at maskme.org. That's masqme.org. Gary and Margaret at beekeepingpodcast.com. Craig at ingleaspodcast.com. Chris and Brandon at Florida Focus Podcast. That's a college football podcast. International Latin Podcast Awards at latinpodcastawards.com. James H. Carter II at creepykingdom.com. Jeff at Disney Coast to Coast. Now, Disney's cool. It's spelled with a Z, so disneycoasttocoast.com. Jason at TV times 3. That is THREE.com. Jay Poole at Post. Why do I always mess this one up? I always want to say pot. It's Potstir, not Post Stir. Potstirpodcast.com. John at soberspeak.com. Lucas at triangletactical.net. Josh Liston at onthebubblepodcast.com. Mark from the Resourceful Designer. Find him at resourcefuldesigner.com. Mike Moody at CreatePod, a podcast about the art of podcasting. Find him at createpodatx.com. Patrick Keller at bigseancepodcast.com. Paul at fightingthroughpodcast.co.uk. Remind me to come back to Paul later. Randall Black at randallblack.com. Ryle Davis Jr., Steve Sleeper at earn.show, Sean Perrin at claraneat.com, Wayne Henderson at mediavoiceovers.com, Cody Sison and Zachary Webb at seriousobouttech.com. So if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, thank you to all of them, by the way. Just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and look at your inbox today, because I'll be sending out the time when we will be doing our awesome meetup that we'll be doing later on in the month. So thanks to all those people for supporting the show. So
don't forget Paul.
Oh, Paul.
You said you needed to come back.
Oh,
to Paul.
Yeah. Paul does a show about World War II, and he had sent me a voicemail. I just realized I didn't put it in today, about how do you go, like, are there agencies to help you find sponsors? And there are. If you go out to podcastingresources.com, he said, praying that it's still up. I think I have all my issues fixed. Podcastingresources.com. Yes. Okay, good. I had a issue with malware on that site, but I've since cleaned it up.
Good. And
it's good. And it has been up for weeks now, which is good. But there are ad agencies you can do that. That's going to be an interesting one, because it's a World War II podcast. So I like, nothing pops out of my head of what product fits in except World War II. See, on one hand, I go, World War II people are probably 60, but on the other hand, right now, Emily, oh my God. She works for Libsyn. She's our community manager. She has black hair. She's got a really, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name.
But just keep going. It'll
anyway, Elsie Escobar, right now is all into World War II. So it's not just older people that grew up with it. It's history people love that. So I don't know if there's a history product or a history website that's a membership site that has an affiliate program, or, I'm not sure. That's one that doesn't sound super easy to
I bet there's some groups out there. I bet there are some big groups out there around that you just need to get into, provide some value into, be a member of them, do some things. I don't think that shouldn't be that difficult. I would think monetizing it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Depends what the value is.
Yeah. So, and
people
then
buy things they can't live without, like iWatches.
Yeah, it's true. Exactly. I needed this, man.
A watch. Yeah. Apple Watch. There we go.
And then I don't know if you want to read this. Some guy put this thing in the chat room. I don't know if you want to read this.
Yeah, I got some openings in September. I never done this to this audience, but as you were going through the supporters, one, I was like, wow, that's an awesome list. And then two, my favorite people to interview are podcasters, because I don't have to do any work to set them up. Right.
Oh, man.
Home Gadget Geeks, we're always looking for guests who want to come in and have some kind of interesting thing to talk about a gadget, and the weirder the gadget, the better. In some regards, I do like last week, we talked about ham radio. I mean, I haven't talked about ham radio in 25 years, and it's back. Like, it's super popular right now. I didn't know. My co-host got into it. So if you got something interesting, a gadget or something technology-wise you want to talk about, love to have you on the show. I can support you in that way by helping you get your show out to my audience. If you want to do that, just let me know. Jim@theaverageguy.tv.
There you go. And
didn't mean to make that a huge commercial, Dave. So
no, that's by all means. And while we're doing it, the question of the month this month at the School of Podcasting, if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/question, is, what was the last thing that wasn't yours that you shared online via whatever social, we don't care. What was the last thing you shared that wasn't yours? And the important thing was why? Why did you share that clip? So if you want to chime in on that, I need it by August 23rd. Just go to schoolofpodcasting.com/questions. So, but today in the post show, like I say, I've been spending money like I have some, which is always kind of fun. And I will be spotlighting a new toy called the Tascam DRX 10X, which is going to be, I will have it at Podcast Movement. It's a handy little tool, and I'll explain what that is when we get to the post show. On this week at the School of Podcasting, I'm interviewing Kristen Meisner, who is the author of the book So You Want to Start a Podcast. Really good interview. Jim, in 28 seconds or less, what's coming up on theaverageguy.tv?
I already pimped it. Ham radio.
Oh, yeah,
just
that's right.
Head out to theaverageguy.tv.
So chat room, thanks for sticking around. Stick around for some more. We got some post show, and like I said, we'll be talking a little fun gears. So stick around for some post show. And we're back. So yeah, and it's getting dark. It was really bright in here, so there we go.
Oh, that looks good.
Yeah,
you should just leave the lights on all the time.
Oh, the other thing I just realized, nobody pointed this out.
Were you crooked?
I was slightly crooked. Yeah, you guys have been looking at the back of my monitor all day.
It was. I thought it was like
it looked like a curtain of some
going
sort.
For that Batman look.
Well, I am crooked. I just now you noticed that I'm also unlevel. All right, maybe
over to the. Oh, I see the monitor that's on the left-hand side.
Yeah, so there. I need to. All right, yeah. We could do this later, Dave. You know, we're gonna
there you go. There you go.
So anyway, I have from Rode. I have a microphone called, oddly enough, The Interviewer. That's a big Bob Barker microphone. And it's not a dynamic. It's actually meant to pick up things around it so that you don't have to have it immediately in somebody's face. You point it at them and it sounds better. But I got this little device called the Tascam DRX 10X, and it looks like this, and it looks like that's it. And on the buttons are very, very minimal. You have a little menu because you can check, like, do I want to WAV or MP3? And then you can listen to it. There is a headphone jack on this side, and for whatever reason, when you listen with headphones, it draws the battery out, so there's some sort of amplifier. Then over here on this side, you have a volume level for the headphones, and then basically you slide up to turn it on and slide up to record, and that whole 9 yards. $95. The only thing that makes me worried, but I understand why, the whole thing is plastic. Like, it weighs almost nothing. But I had a 58 laying here. Honestly, I did here. So I don't know that this would work with like a 2100. It might, but the 2100 has a different base. So here's a Shure SM58, which is perfectly round. And the 2100 has that extra thing because it's a sound card. So I brought out my 58. Look at this poor thing. It's all dented. And this is
supposed to be. That's love.
Yeah. this has got some band scars on it, but I just plug this into the bottom of this thing. And that's it. And then you just, get a little pop filter going on. And so if I wanted to do, something at Podcast Movement, didn't want to carry a lot of stuff with me, this is, this would fit in your suitcase super easy. I don't know that I would have it plugged in during travel.
Definitely not.
Yeah, that's just
definitely not. You would definitely want to pull that out.
The microphone is definitely not going to come off easily, but and the only thing that I would change about it is the other thing. It has a USB, so something Rode should learn from. You can plug this in and get your files off of it, which is cool. But I cannot delete files off this thing, at least that I've figured out, without plugging it in.
Okay.
So, and it only holds 32 gigs. But I mean, that's a ton of time.
No card, no removable card. No removable.
There's a removable card. Yeah, it's on the left-hand side, little SD card. So, and they say, hey, be very careful handling an SD card. You can just plug it in. I'm like, yeah, but I've got to plug this thing in. And the other thing I should mention, and I've now had two issues. Either it's my hub, and Jim, you might be able to shine some light on this. I have a 4-port hub. It looks like this little hockey puck looking thing with
USB 3, USB 2, or powered or not?
It's not powered. That's why I was wondering. So I plug it into that, and I've now had my gimbal was a little flaky when I plugged it into that. And this thing, I could not get the USB to work. It just was like, I don't know what to do. It's my USB or not.
It may need to be powered.
Yeah. So I plugged it directly into the computer and I had no problems with it. Same thing with the gimbal.
Yeah.
So that's my new fun toy. And because I'm bringing that, and I'm bringing the Rode lavalier system to, not that I'm going to plan on doing a ton of interviews at Podcast Movement, but I was just like, hey, this is a way for me to get some fun toys to play with. And I just basically approached Rode and I said, hey, I'm going to be around your target audience. Do you want me to have like some of your gear to show to other people? And they're like, yeah. So that was cool. So Bangs had a question for me. I was looking through some web news channels when I lost cable television for an hour or two a little while ago. It was a CBS show and the 3 hosts were using ATR 2100s. There you go.
Oh, it's good. It's good mic. Yeah. I mean, it's no 58. Okay.
No, the 58.
It's no 58, but
yeah. This thing, the great thing about it is the case comes off. Like you can buy a new pop filter for this thing.
Oh, you can't though. That's love and acceptance. Like that. It smells a little bit like beer, and it does it.
Probably. My
beer and bad breath in a bar.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this just screams. It fell over and landed this way. Yeah. You know, it's I
hear that the Army is thinking of making helmets out of that same kind of grid material
because it
handles it so well, and it would breathe right through it and smell like beer. So it would be exactly the same if you put it on a soldier's head.
Yeah. Daniel says the preamp in the DRX-10X isn't good for studio use, but it'd probably be fine. Yeah, it's not. I did a quick test recording and I was like, exactly. My whole point is I'm going to be recording this somewhere noisy. You know, and I was like, yeah, it'll work. For me, it was like for the person who doesn't want to do an H6, because I mean, the H6 is like the ultimate.
What's the retail on that thing?
$95.
Yeah, it's Tascam quality plus price. They are really good. Tascam's really good in that sweet spot of $99 to $199.
Yeah. So for me, let me actually, everybody's asking in the chat room. Let me get my iPad out of the way and slap up a fun-filled affiliate link for this thing. I should have had that ahead of time. But it's a Tascam. Like I say, the only thing, and it's weird because a lot of people, have you ever heard of Movo? Movo is like the newer. Newer.
It's probably newer. Let's just be honest. They're all the same Chinese company, right?
Yeah.
Because all those companies are the same one.
Like newer or Movo is, they have a mic very similar to the Rode Interviewer, and it's like half the price. Mm-hmm. So there you go. That's the link in the chat room. But it'll be fun. So I was just like, you know, depending on the person. So to go back to me, the H6 is like the ultimate portable recording solution. But to do that, you got to have mic cables. You have to have, you know, and it's made for recording more than one person, like 3 or 4 if you're doing that. But if I was doing single people and didn't want to lug around a bunch of gear, I'm like, this might be the solution. But I haven't played yet with the Rode thing that plugs into the iPhone with the 2 lavs. You know, both have cables. You know, then you're dealing with cables, and the more effort it takes to set up, the better the sound you're probably going to get. So to me, you know, if I had a Zoom H1N, you know, that's fine, but I don't like recording on any Zoom equipment I've ever purchased. I don't like their built-in microphones. I don't know what it is. I can never avoid popping P's. Even with the little pop filter on it, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to hold this in the right situation, and I just always got popping P's. So, but anyway, Daniel says he's thinking of recording videos at Podcast Movement, so that'll be fun. And then Ross says the RE50 is my go-to mic for grabbing interviews on the go at conferences. The RE50 is, I'm assuming that's Electro Voice again. Mm-hmm. So I've never heard of the RE50.
I think that's the handheld one.
Is that the big Bob Barker microphone?
Well, not as skinny as Bob Barker, but
yeah,
it is a nice handheld one.
Yeah, that's 200 bones, where the Movo is 49. And I would have to, but yeah, I see where they have this little DRX-10 paired in some cases with the RE50. So
179 on that 50 on the RE50.
It is the RE50. Yeah, depending on I see
179 on Amazon.
Yeah. So, and I can see where you can get both of them for $279. So that's basically the same price. But yeah, I need to buy a pop filter. I thought I had a bunch of windscreens to put on microphones, but I don't. So.
I think Ross loves the fact that does not transfer a lot of your handheld. If you've heard somebody if it's 2100, you can kind of tell they're holding on to it.
Yeah.
You're like, but this 50, I think probably has some things to stop that.
Yeah, I would think any mic that's designed, because I was laughing when I did my recording. Because I'm sitting there moving around things, and it's like even with a 58, I was kind of like, but it was because I was moving my hand and jostling things.
It does double as a hammer too, by the way. That you can nail things in. It's a shim. If you need a shim, you can jam that thing in there and shim it out.
Yeah,
Randy, it's a jack handle. You can use it as a jack handle.
Randy says 0 handling noise on the RE 50. So
that might be a good one. That's a good recommendation, Ross. I like that. That's it especially for if you're going out and having to handle it. And that's kind of a great price point too for that kind of mic. You could throw it in the studio if you want to. It'd work great for that. Yeah,
the thing, and again, it goes back to whatever you're doing, but I like that idea. To me, it's just the guy from Gimlet, I forget the mic he used, but it was like a shotgun mic with this giant, literally like 2-foot cone, and he would point it at his mouth. So that was one where you really had to wait for, like, the guest would kind of figure out, like, don't start talking until he puts the microphone at me, because I was watching his thing on interviewing months ago on Skillshare. And Ross says the RE50 is the the industry standard for there you go.
What's ENG?
I don't know. The ever
English?
Engineering?
Interviewing? I don't know. Yeah. Just making things up.
Yeah.
Getting punch drunk here at the end.
Oh, this is interesting. In Ohio, as of August 2nd, B&H is now charging sales tax after the recent Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah, I think most are. Yeah. Most are now. I think mostly the sales tax days, sale tax free days here in the United States are coming quickly to a close. I think you're going to start seeing January 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, the electronic news gathering industry. There we go. Okay. ENG. And then Randy said, do I still use my giant squid mic? That used to be the thing. I had an H1 or somewhere in my apartment. I have a Roland R-05 from back in the day. And I would take that with either of those and go to town on it. And so my giant squid is in my backpack. That was my go-to. I would take that and my little H1, there wasn't anything wrong with that. I've had people ask me, and I don't know what I was doing. Oh, I had the B&H. It was like Christmas. B&H sent me an actual physical catalog. And that's that is a dangerous document right there. And I was scrolling through and I was like, wait, what is that? And so I looked it up and I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool little tool. So when I saw it was $95, I'm like, all right, I'll pull the trigger on that. And I thought, that way because usually what I will do at events is I will get a lot of last 5 and 5s. Because I had a couple of people say, why don't you do those anymore? And I'm like, because nobody sent them in. And so I thought I might ask people that, or at Podcast Movement, I might be asking, what was the last thing you shared that wasn't yours? That whole 9 yards. And I'm like, it'd just be cool if I had something I just pull out and hit record and go to town. So that's the only thing about this thing that I just need to, they have a really good design so that you can't like accidentally hit record on this, but it does take a little, you have to get used to your thumb and you sliding it. And it's not hard. It's like any piece of gear. You have to use it a bit to figure out what so when you're in the weeds, man, when you're in the thick of it, you don't look up and go, oh, I forgot to hit record. So
not that that's ever happened to you.
No, never.
In any given, listen, I can't complain. I never have to hit record. I would probably I give you a hard time about it, but I would probably be twice as bad as you about hitting record. I remember it at the end of the show when, I'm like, oh, okay, almost. I did a whole interview one time and didn't hit broadcast on Hangouts. How do you get through a whole 45 minutes and not? Well, I did it at 5 a.m. That was part of the problem. But
see, now Randy's making me think I might have to dust off. I forget who my contact is at Electro Voice to go. Is there any chance I could get one of those to play with? Because they're literally right down the street. They have a big warehouse and a factory here, and I don't know if it's a factory, but they definitely have a presence in the lovely Cuyahoga Falls, which is where I'm at. So. And then Ross
I don't do a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
So it was just a question. Like, would I replace, if I was going to replace this, would I use an RE50 and could it be a good studio mic as well? And then it could double if I needed it. I just pull it off the stand and take it with me. when I'm going someplace.
Yeah. Randy says, I've had 2 RE50s for a decade, and plus they're great plugged into my H6. There you go.
For sure.
Have you ever thought of do you care, Jim, for video? Bandrew did a thing on, there was some Electro Voice shotgun mic that you could basically put on your monitor and point it at you. It would pick you up. And I was like, that's an interesting strategy if you ever wanted to go there for some reason. Because I know some people are like, well, the mic's in the shots. And I'm like, yeah, it's a talking head video. I'm not really that worried about it.
I think for this genre, this is better, just honestly. But for if I was recording, I watch a lot of solo podcasters who have YouTube channels. And when you're doing it that way, I think it's good to get the mic out of the way. When it's kind of presentation style, I watch a cigar podcast guy that he does at 7 minutes a day, and it's just kind of a review or it's an update on something. Well, he uses I shouldn't even say this, but he uses a Blue Yeti, and it sounds pretty good.
Well, here's what you can do is I'm going to zoom in on me. So if we, I'll just make myself taller. So I did that and, kind of played with this a bit. Yeah. You can have it off or I could have it if I wanted to do this. I could bring it, and if I could bring it up and point, like it's basically right here. And point it up. There are ways you could do that, but now it's up close and personal. And they're like, I think Dave has a booger. It's like,
well, you also do what you just did is you lean into it from time to time. Yeah. You get like with a shotgun mic across here, you're not like, you don't do that. You just sit here and talk. But pairing that shotgun mic with some wireless earbuds that you especially if you get the smaller ones that you can put in, could be a really, really good look. I still like to hear myself in how I sound. If I can't hear it, it is not good. When I do live stuff, I have to be careful because I end up over modulating or pushing too hard on the vocals because I can't hear that. I can't hear it coming back. So I like to hear that voice, but that could be an interesting setup to get that shotgun out and bring it right at you. Yeah, that should work. That's the way we record at Gallup when they're doing voiceover or when they're doing video work. We have studio full lit, and then there's shotgun mics that go in.
Yeah, Banks says the Zoom recorders with dials don't lock the gain when you throw the lock switch. That's interesting. I have an H6 that's still in the box.
Oh, dude, that's a crime. That's a crime.
Makes the news H1 iffy with a lav mic compared to the older H1. And then he also says shotguns require more noise treatment, regardless of what you do. Interesting. So, and we get all sorts of opinion here. I wouldn't use the RE50 as my primary studio mic before I had an SM7B. I used the Samson Q2U over the RE50 on a stand. Oh, but RE50 is better for remote interviews, low handling noise. Yeah, omnidirectional. Yep. Yeah. In fact, I think that's one in his picture right there.
I think it is.
Yeah. So
yeah. No, that's all good feedback. I appreciate that. We've actually haven't had a really good microphone conversation in a while. Yeah. And that's kind of one of the things I noticed on Amazon is they pair that with a flag stand, with a flag box.
I do have a flag coming, by the way. I'm going all in, for podcast movement.
Nice.
That was like, well, that was one. Here's the thing: do you have more time or money? Because I wanted to, I could have bought, I think, a $9 plastic thing, and then I could have bought stickers and stuck it on the flag thing, and then ended up with a box of stickers, which meant I would have had to go buy some color ink because. Do you run into this? I never print anything.
No.
And when I finally go to print something, my ink is dried up and dead, and I can do the whole clear the head, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, I'm like, crap. All right, here's another $29 for one page that I will print in color. And then nobody will ask me to print anything for another 6 months. And
printers are so cheap though. You go to Walmart to get one. They're paying you. Like, how much is this printer? We'll give you $25 if you take it.
That's it. That is quite the racket. If you think about it.
Mafia runs printer ink. I am sure money is being laundered through that industry in some way. I went on the HP ink plan. So I pay, I don't know, $3.99 a month. And it's the printer tells them when I'm getting low on ink and they just ship me new cartridges. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is kind of interesting. It's probably more expensive than just buying cartridges, but it feels better because it's only $3.99 a month or whatever. It's not terribly $4.99. It's not terribly expensive. But Sarah had said, yeah, I'm going to need to do some printing. I'm in this thing and I need to do some printing. And our other printer was just a piece of crap. And so I went and bought a new one for, I think, $29, like just, and then join this plan. And so there's kind of a new, it's like a subscription service for printing.
Yeah. I do have a question. I had this in my list of things here. I don't get Chartable. A lot of people are jumping on Chartable. This is Ask the Podcast Coach in Chartable.
Ooh.
And because I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to talk about it, I might as well see what it does.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I see that it does that is kind of neato is here it shows the total downloads of the episode, whatever. And if you'll notice here, the reason why this one has 0, what I did is this is one where I put it out on like Thursday, but I backdated it to show that it went out on Saturday. So if you look at it, it looks like we never miss a Saturday. That's called cheating, and it works perfectly fine. So apparently to this, it's like, well, wait a minute, it's been a week and this thing got no downloads. So it's by the time it went out, the date had already passed. So but it does give you this line. How many downloads did you get in the first 7 days? And that's one of my favorite metrics. We talked about this last week with measuring, your growth. But other than that, and I can see my charts, I do see this. And of course, right now, this I think is interesting. You can compare one episode to another. So I could say, well, let's compare this to, this one, which is, here, let's just do one. Is the super awesome episode versus is there a podcasting pay gap? And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. If I go weekly, I don't know. To me, I'm just kind of like, okay, I don't use their smart links. I still don't quite understand them, but I haven't really dug a lot into them. I can get reviews. And then of course I want to see where I'm at on their charts. And this is where, this is the Apple Podcast charts, which is why they're saying, hey, they're updating their charts here. So I can see we're number 2 in Britain. And I probably need to, it hasn't updated.
You'll send me my royalty check for that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Integrations. This is the one that I always was like, is I can, if I want to, I can log into Podcast Connect here and they will somehow, just to me, that just seems weird that I have to give them my login name and password to Podcast Connect. And I actually had a phone conversation. The guy was like, no, we use the same security they do in the Army. And I'm like, you know what? All I hear about is people getting hacked, blah, blah, blah. So I guess to me, I just, and if I go to episodes, we haven't clicked on that yet. I do see this column, which is, again, is kind of neat. How many downloads did we get after 7 days? But I also don't know if this is IAB compliant, which, boy, I can't say anything about that yet, but I will just say very, 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 very soon, Libsyn should be announcing that they are now IAB certified, but I didn't say that here because that would be ahead of an actual announcement that will be happening very, 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 very soon. So to me, I just kind of go, and here's my worry about this. And it's only happened twice, as it happens with every new internet service. If Chartable has a problem, none of your episodes download because it goes to Chartable first. Chartable goes, all right, it's a download, and then it sends it to whoever your media host is. And it's been very quick, but they've gone down twice in the past year when they first came out. So to me, I scratch my head and go, I don't get it. Because I don't see any stats there besides the 7-day thing that I can't get in Libsyn or Blueberry or any other kind of thing. So I just kind of go, all right. Because to me, it's not worth the risk. I don't want anything between me and my audience unless I'm really getting something, out of it. But the other thing I saw, and this is what's interesting, is I saw somebody go, oh, I go there because apparently they now have a chart system. Like they have their own separate from Apple chart system based on the downloads from people using Chartable. And they're kind of doing the same thing that PodTrack is doing. They're calling it the industry kind of charts. And it's not really the industry. It's the industry. It's the charts based on people who are using Chartable, in the same way that PodTrack it's the podcast charts based on people who are using PodTrack. So like Joe Rogan is not on any of these because Joe Rogan's not using these services because he's doing fine without them. He's okay. He's on the top of every chart anyway.
He's got momentum.
And then Daniel says they also want everybody's downloads so they can make their own downloads-based charts. Yeah, so that's what they're working on. And there's some things that are kind of sketchy. If you look at, I don't think I can because I'm logged in, but there's some things that, where is it? There's some wording on their site that basically says, we sell your content, because it used to be they were free. They're not anymore. They actually have a somewhat of a business model, but there was something on their site that was like, get to know everything about your such and such. And, using this, we can give you like who is, and I was just like, wait a minute, you can't get any of that information from a podcast. So I was kind of like, just makes me a little worried at times. They do have a podcast. I've been checking that out, but for me, I'm not anti-chartable. I just don't get it. And I now that they're having this chart thing, and I'm like, there are two things that I don't mind comparing my own episode to my own episode, but the whole point of a chart is you're comparing your podcast to somebody else's. And I'm like, I just don't think that's a good idea.
Well, but they know podcasters are obsessed about
their stats. Yeah.
Their stats and their numbers. Hey, I just put this out. It's not showing up on iTunes. Why is that? Well, because it takes a second. It's going to space. Like, give it a second. Just relax and get a cup of coffee. It'll be fine. But you see this in the Facebook groups all the time. They just, hey, I got 750 last month and only 750 last month, and I'm at 748. What did I do wrong? You're like, well, okay.
Yeah. Mike Dell and I always joke, if your stats go down, what's wrong with your system? There's got to be something wrong at Libsyn. Right. Yeah. And if stats go up, they're like, are these bots? Like, you cannot, I answer, no. I would say at least 30% of my things. And what I will do is I will go in and say, okay, here's what I looked at. Here's an episode from January. You had 700 downloads in the first 7 days. Here's an episode from June. You're up to 780 downloads after the first 7 days. Your show is growing. And it's just like, so it's always fun with stats. I haven't heard anything about this from Bangs here. If you heard about the proposed changes to the U.S. copyright law, the CASE Act just passed I have not heard about that. And have a good one, Randy. He says his chores are calling.
HelloFresh just came. I heard the doorbell ring. Yeah,
that's fun. Have you heard that I did see Seth wrestler from, he's the Jacob Media guy, and it is going to be announced August 15th at 3:45. There's a big announcement coming from the music industry. I wonder what it could be. Jim, do you have any ideas?
I don't know. I have no insight on this at all. It's from the music industry. It's a big announcement. It probably will have something to do with music and podcasting and people being able to purchase a subscription to be able to play music on their podcast.
You think that could be it? I don't know.
I don't know what is, I don't know. We've telegraphed this thing pretty.
Everybody has now.
Yeah, come on, just to fucking announce it. It's like they must be hung up on pricing a little bit. Like, like what exactly are we going to charge for this thing, and who's going to be available in it? That's always been around the music stuff. That's always the catch. Like, okay, which houses that govern all this stuff? Who's going to allow what and who's opted in and out? I'm sure Taylor Swift is involved in some way.
Yeah,
She's probably complaining about it in some way.
Yeah. Daniel actually has it. He's going to break the news right here. The Beatles are starting a podcast.
There's a couple of them left.
That's right. Hello, Ringo. Right. Great. Peace and love. Peace and love. That'd be great. That's the name. Actually, that's the name of the show. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
With Ringo and Paul.
With Ringo and Paul.
I would listen to that. Can you mention the stories those guys have? Oh, that would be awesome.
Hey, let's speculate on this announcement. So, okay, so let's say let's just say, by the way, neither one of us know anything about
it. Zero. That's why we're laughing about it, because we know it, but nobody will give the actual details.
And if you're coming after us, go after Todd Cochran, because he's the one who said all these things. Okay, so don't come after us. Todd is the one who doesn't say anything about. Anyways, so let's just say they do offer a service where you can get good chunks of music libraries available in your podcast, and it's got to be $50. Don't you think? I mean, it's going to be pretty expensive. Don't
a
you
month?
Think? Yeah.
You think?
Like,
Yeah, all I know is the one time I contacted an artist and they wanted $300 to play it once. So I'm like, hopefully it's not that ridiculous.
Well, but remember before Apple brokered the 99 cents, it was ridiculous as well, right? We were in the $4 and $5 for a song if you could even get it, and there were some weird things going on. This could standardize that, but I'm just kind of thinking, okay, well, let's just say it's $25. Okay, so let's say it's $24.99, unlimited use in your podcasts. You have to become a licensee and this kind of thing, and you're going to have to adhere to a whole bunch of rules. That's just the way it's going to be. I think it could affect advertising as too. So that could be one of those things that are coming. Like if you're currently inserting your own ads in, I think that this could change that. So for $25, music in your podcast, you know how cheap podcasters are.
That's the thing. Because this is we're looking at podcastmovement.com, podcastmusic.com, and this guy has been fighting Doug, I think his name is, if I remember right. Really nice guy. And I just keep telling him, look, man, when I can play James Taylor and AC/DC, come talk to me. Because he's like, we got another label on board. And I'm like, okay, who's on? He's like, oh, it's, whatever. Enough's enough. And I'm like, that doesn't count. Like, I'm like,
no more ABBA. I can't take ABBA anymore.
Yeah. So
not ABBA.
They currently have a plan for $20 a month for those who earn revenue from podcasts. That's an interesting one. How do you prove that? One podcast title, show, ad sponsor supported, independent or network affiliated, unlimited downloads versus $10 a month for somebody who has no ads or sponsorship. So I would do that. I would start up an electric blues podcast like that, because I remember the days of the PodSafe Music Network, and there were some really good music shows. As stupid as that is, in an age when I can play any song I want on Spotify, Spotify sometimes does a really great job. I look forward to Mondays because it's like, here's your weekly stuff we think you'll like playlist. And some days it's great, and other weeks I'm like, I remember one week, I think it was on April 1st. It was all disco, and it finally dawned on me that it was April 1st. And I'm like, oh, I get it. Ha, 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 funny. But
so you would think there's going to be some streaming restrictions as well. So if we're going to stream it, is that going to be different than if it's just going in a podcast? Because streaming it now, what prevents me from buying this license and just everybody having their own internet radio station?
Well, there is... Oh, I can't remember the website. There is a website that you can buy a license. They do all the stuff for streaming. So it was for places like, oh crap. There was a super famous streaming site whose name I cannot remember.
Shark, Groove Shark, Music Shark.
No, it was, they went out of business and then they came back in business. Oh, but it'll come to me later.
Yeah.
But there was
we'll get it here,
and so you could get it. Basically, you could get this license to allow you to stream. But in theory, that's what you paid those for. So if you had your own streaming thing, Live 365, tell him what he's won, Daniel. It's a cheese straightener. Thank you. Yeah. So Live 365.
Laugh, I just bought one of those from Pampered Chef.
Yeah. So yeah, Live 365 had a built-in license. But what if I had something like whatever, insert, I forget the name of my streaming thing, Abovecast. What if I had Abovecast? Well, now I have to go buy a license for that. So there is some licensing thing for streaming stations. So the fun part of this is going to be, downloads. That's always been the deal breaker. But I just wonder if the music industry has finally figured out that if somebody really wants to download your album, I can get it. It goes back to money or time. Because I remember when Napster went away and I was so used to Napster and I got into BitTorrent for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You can get all sorts of, I just felt like I was on the dark side of the web. I'm like, I feel like I need a shower when I download
It's all available anywhere. You just got to have, you just have to decide, am I going to be legal or not? Right. I mean, it's so easy to find that stuff if you want to get it. I'm intrigued. I'll be intrigued by just how much permissions this gives the podcaster, and what are the restrictions. Like I said, if you're calling it a podcast and you can live stream this stuff, do you know how many internet radio stations are going to pop up? It's going to get stupid for everybody. Because you said, well, I want to do my own blues station kind of thing, and you know,
well, there's a ton, and that used to be big. I mean, if you go to powerofpodcasting.com at the bottom, if you click play, you will hear our streaming station that has basically all of my shows on it. And there used to be, like, I remember when I first built that years ago, there were a ton of internet radio stations in Windows Media Player and in Apple iTunes. I don't know if that has been like reduced, because why would I promote this free internet radio when I want you to go to Apple Music where you can stream music? I would assume they maybe don't. I don't know that they would cut it back. I bet they don't promote it as much. I bet it's much harder to find, or you have to manually add stations or things like that. But there are some really, especially for me, people overseas who still love hard rock made some kick butt radio stations. So it's going to be fun to watch. But apparently, when is Podcast Movement? It's 2 weeks, right? So they'll be announcing that at Podcast Movement, August 15th. So 3:45. So yeah,
we'll all wait with bated breath,
and then we'll go, oh, and
watch it be really lame.
So is this going to be a good thing, or like, oh, they don't get it?
You know, some kind of like, yeah, wait, this is available for you, and for $2,000, and then $200 a month, you can have unlimited access to all the music, both download and streaming and whatever you want. It's, or radio, basically the same as they're charging radio stations, which is a boatload, right? I mean,
what's the most you would pay?
Zero. I have no interest in putting music in my, it's not something I need to do. It's nothing I do fits that mold. So it's like, I just like, no, I don't need, I've kind of grown past Back in Black on as a,
what do you think the average podcaster would pay? Like somebody who's really into music, they're dying to, they've always wanted to be the DJ.
Dave, they won't pay $20 for hosting.
Yeah. That's
like their basic, this is like putting gasoline in your car, and they won't spend $20. Like, how can I do it for free? Like
that is true.
So $0. Zero. I can't imagine. Now most of the podcasters who are making money and can find a way to make them more money, they'll jump on this thing in a second. But your average indie podcaster is going to be like, oh, it's money. No, I don't think so.
I'm glad I stopped myself. I actually was like this close to hitting play on Spotify and doing a talk up, but I just like, wait, you idiot, you're on YouTube.
Yeah.
That'll get you slammed real quick.
Right. Yeah.
No. So, it'll be fun to see. I was hoping they were going to announce it sooner, but I can see why they would wait.
No, I think it's great that it gets announced at Podcast Movement, and a lot of people get to talk about it. But I think there may be a collective kind of like, when after they announce it. Or maybe it will be great. It's very possible that it will be absolutely great that you can do this. I just don't. I can't. I know the community too well.
It'll be fun to watch because I think the diehard, the guy that always wanted to like, hey, it's Wild Willie's, blah blah blah, playing the best ska music, and they're gonna put on their radio voice to do it. Yeah, here we go with mighty mighty boss tones, whatever. Because they grew up wanting to be that guy on the radio. So.
Well, and you can, like, if you want to do that. I just don't think it $20. Let's just say it's $20, and people and the hundreds of new radio stations pop up to do this.
Yeah,
they do it for 2 months and nobody listens, and you're like, okay, why am I doing this?
Well, there is the thing. I'll go back to Paul Culligan's kid. He got in his car. I think his daughter was 12 at the time, and they forgot to bring their phone. He goes, well, that's all right. I'll just turn on the radio. And she said, what's radio? And he goes, oh, it's this thing and blah, blah, blah. And they'll play the music for us. And she goes, why would I let somebody else pick the music? And to her, it was just like so foreign. And I'm like, I could see where the music thing could be like, well, why would I let somebody else, I like it for discovery. And that's where you totally have to relationship with the DJ at that point, picking the right music. Like Marcus Couch used to do a show called The Scene Zine that was a super hard rock show, and it was just awesome. And he found the best music that I was always discovering. So it should be fun. Yeah.
I think Daniel's joking, but he says, get any music you want on your podcast for $20 a month plus $500 a song. Right. And actually, this could be a model like this where you're paying a subscription, and then it's maybe not $500, but it could be $9.99 a song, and you get unlimited rights to use that in both podcast and in live streaming. That would actually be pretty reasonable. That would keep 1 million live stream radio stations from starting, which would be okay, but still allow a podcaster who wants to have Back in Black as their intro. Yeah. That's pretty reasonable, right? And you'd have rights to that as long as you pay $20 a month, right? And so that keeps that stream rolling. The second I put that in my podcast, now I'm tied to having that there.
That's the question. What happens if I cancel my subscription? Yeah. Do I have to go update all my old back catalog?
Well, Spreaker's been doing this for a while, right? They got a music catalog that you can buy from, right? And you can use it as long as you're paying it. Now, I think they've worked a deal that once you stop paying it, you don't have to go back. I think,
yeah,
you don't have to go back and pull it out. But
should be fun. But
there was a perfect "that's what she said" in there.
All right. Well, chat room, thank you as always. Always fun to see everybody. And once again, Jim, I started off the day by going, I'm not sure if we have enough content, and we got to.
I tell you every time. We're
three
fine.
Things on my list.
We are fine. We are fine. There's always things to talk about. So, chat room, thanks for coming out. Good work today. These guys were on top of it. So good to see you guys.
Awesome. All right.
Have a good weekend.
See you guys later. See ya.